You're now listening to Driesen ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.
Anything can happen Friday. The art and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Driesen ASEAN. You're with Gowri here today on your Anything Can Happen Friday, where we bring you the arts and culture side from Malaysia as well as other parts of Southeast Asia. And today we'll be talking about a very interesting upcoming play called Marilyn and Me. And to discuss that with me, I have Stephanie Van Driesen in the house. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello. Hi, Gowri. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, and so before we start talking about Marilyn and Me, perhaps we could have a little introduction to yourself. Where did you study performing arts, and how did you get roped into the theater scene in Malaysia?
Okay. Well, I started out. I actually have a bachelor's degree in musical theater, which I got from LaSalle College of the Arts in Singapore. So I was quite lucky that my parents were willing to sort of just say, hey, you've got a way in, go for it, because I've always been singing and dancing, but I didn't have acting, so I learned all those three there. I had a pretty good time there, and I decided to come back to Malaysia to see what I could do with it here, and that was back in 2008.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's quite recent. Actually.
I guess so, yeah.
And when you got back to Malaysia, how did you find things out, or what was your first performance? Who did you work with?
Well, I actually had I had a little bit of inroads even before I left. I was doing some sort of singing for places like No Black Tie, which is a lovely cabaret venue, and also I was doing some corporate gigs and all that sort of thing. So just on the fly. Right. So when I came back, I kind of just worked with those people. I did a lot of sort of little cabaret shows, and then finally I had a friend who remembered me from a long time back, and he said that he'd open a theater company, and he was going to do this musical, which was just 5 ladies in it, and I thought, yeah, sure, and it was actually a couple of years after I came back. Yeah, and that was called Shout the Mott Musical, which we did in 2010. Okay. And then I was pretty busy after that. Like I was doing a couple of musicals and all that. Yeah. All right.
And are you actually doing this full time right now? You just straight on into theater?
Oh, I would love it. Yeah, I think here we don't quite have the industry that can support that just yet. Right. But I was trying, and I did actually have a successful run in 2011 where I was pretty much booked out the whole year with big musicals. So I would sort of do corporate singing for events, on the side to make money, do voiceovers, things like that, but still expression related jobs. Yeah.
Right. And speaking of the performing arts scene in Malaysia or in KL particularly, what is the most difficult part about being in it, in your opinion?
Well, I guess, that it depends on who you ask. Okay. But I think the general thing that, that everyone talks about is funding. It's a very big thing that sort of, I think we're increasingly getting skilled people, people getting better at the craft of acting or singing or dancing. But I think it's that level of interest and level of support that people are ready to back it, fund it, to help the artists sort of put up their creative work, to see the value in it. Right. And maybe that's probably one of the main things that people experience. But I think if you ask the performer what that would be, sometimes it depends. If you're first starting out, maybe you need the contacts, maybe you need the skill. But I think for me, if I were to put it for me now, it would be more about sort of getting funding, I guess.
And let's move on to your play as well. How did you come up with the idea for Marilyn and Me?
Oh, this is funny because actually it's leaning more towards a musical actually. So that there are songs. How did I come up with it? I actually haven't done a one-woman show since a little thing I did back in 2009. So I'd always been a little bit scared about sort of carrying my own show by myself. So I thought it was about time. So initially it was just going to be a concert. I thought it was just going to be, a couple of songs that I like. Easygoing, but I'm kind of ambitious. I kind of like to challenge myself a little bit. So I decided, is there a message? And I personally believe in freedom and being yourself and beauty. Questions around that sort of thing. People can relate to. So I was like, okay, is there a face Is there a face that I can put to this? And somehow Marilyn Monroe felt really, really, really cool, like really cool to explore. So I started diving into it as an actor. Yeah. And then I found, okay, I can create a story out of this. Yeah.
And tell us a bit about that whole process as well. Why did you pick Marilyn? You said there's a story to it. Maybe what about Marilyn that inspired you to tell the story?
Well, interestingly, I'm very interested to see, or rather and I have been exploring her life as a performer, her life as a woman, and also, you know, she did go through a very significant point in her life where she didn't want to do what she was doing anymore. She didn't want to be the blonde bimbo. You know, she wanted to be a serious actress. So I find that I have a parallel a little bit with, I can relate to that. I feel like I want to get to the next stage as well with my career, and you know, I've kind of, you know, done certain things and had some success, and now it's like I want to be more of a creator. So there are parallels with being an artist, being a woman, and also about sort of, like, you know, beauty and you know, do we need to put up a mask? Do we need to put up a face so that people can accept us as artists or as people? So those are quite deep themes running through it.
Okay. Did you have that problem of people stereotyping you as a certain type of actress whenever you received roles or scripts?
I was a little bit lucky, I guess, because in theatre it doesn't really work that way. I think maybe if you're more of a TV or movie person, then that kind of, usually people sort of stereotype you. But for me, it was actually, people see you doing stuff and they say that's all you do. Whereas I've got a lot of interests, and I was sort of struggling with, you know, how do I combine all these interests together? You know, so of course people would say, oh, do you only sing, or are you only a performer? But I'm like, well, I want to create things, you know, I want to be a lot more of a force of, I don't know, change, who knows. And I'm also into like sort of like healing therapies. So I've used them on myself, and I've kind of consulted with some people. So I was like, and I really see the difference in people when they go through a life-changing experience. So I thought theatre is life-changing. So why not put the two together?
And talking more about the story or the process of Marilyn and Me, what were some of the challenges that you faced while trying to make it happen?
Well, it's interesting because we're still creating it. I say we because I've got a collaborator who's helping me write it and structure it, and his name is Dennis Yep, and he's actually a film major from the States, but he's Malaysian. So he's come back, he's worked with, you know, he's worked with me in other musicals and stuff, but somehow it felt right to just explore this and create a story around it. So it's been very fulfilling. I mean, the challenges are because suddenly we're operating like a little production company. You know, it's not just I'm a singer and I'm going to sing, but I'm creating, you know. So we're having to do our own publicity, we're having to do our own, you know, linking up with people, things like that. So it's actually, the more challenging stuff is all the stuff that performers don't normally do.
And what about in terms of getting the word out to people, in terms of even marketing the show? What kind of perception do you had to create?
I mean, I think we really observe the patterns of people, you know, in KL and I guess sometimes in Singapore as well, if some of them might be willing to come up and see, is to kind of be to use the social media platforms, you know, to post up videos or, you know, like stuff on Instagram, stuff like that, and do the WhatsApp. Like, you know, people like that sort of one-to-one touch. So we've been working on that, and, you know, it's been slightly delayed because we're so busy working on the show. But I think there is a good amount of buzz around it so far, and I just want people to come and enjoy it, really.
And it'll be just you. It's a one-woman show.
Yeah, and I've got an amazing 4-piece band behind me as well.
So that's we on stage.
Yeah, that's we on stage. And Dennis will be there helping me. He's helping me now with the process, but also he'll be there to kind of, there's a little section in the show where he comes in as well.
And I'm also curious to know, what are some of the similarities that you find between Marilyn and you?
That's funny because, you know, people are like, who are you to say? But for me, I think, as I mentioned a bit earlier as well, is that I do find that I'm at that crossroads where I want, I want a bit more meaning, and I want to enhance myself, and, you know, of course you want to make more money as well, and start building things. So I really relate to that portion of her life when because she actually sort of decided to go and study acting and the actor studio and open up her own company, things like that. But I think also how she is as a woman on stage, on screen, you know, that electricity, that sort of comfort in her own body and her own beauty is something that I think I've struggled with. You know, I mean, I've never really fully seen myself as super attractive or whatever. Okay. Even though, you know, we put on makeup and you feel great, but what if you don't, you know? So, yeah, there are a lot of parallels that I can relate to.
Okay. So, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we will discuss more about Marilyn and me and also about women's perception in today's world.
Anything can happen Friday. The art and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Duran ASEAN. You're still with me, Gowri, and I have Stephanie Van Driesen in the house.
Hello, thanks again for having me, Gowri.
No problem, thanks for joining me. I can't do that beautiful vibrato, so I'm sorry. So, moving on, I think I just want to go back to a point you mentioned earlier about what you said, that you don't think you're particularly attractive or what, but you are a very beautiful woman. And I think you've also created a very good reputation or branding for yourself, that people actually, at least people in the theater scene, when they hear Stephanie Van Driesen, they expect something of quality, something top-notch. How did you get there? How did you create this for yourself?
I think, you know, it's a combination of, you know, maybe being in the right place at the right time, and also, I guess, pushing yourself. Right. I guess I was lucky because I did have my training, and the 3 years of doing that was really intense, and you know, I think a lot of performers here who don't get the opportunity to study under that kind of stringent qualities, or rather a course, you know, they maybe take a bit longer to sort of get the skill up or the confidence up in order to carry a show or, you know, be considered for a role like that. So I guess in that sense, that was quite an advantage that I had. But also, I've been working with really good people who just sort of, you know, push me as well. And, you know, to mention some of them, like Nell Ng of Pen Productions, you know, she's been doing, in fact, some of my bigger roles with her have been really the ones that allowed me to go quite far. You know, so she's one of the many supporters, and Susan Lancaster as well. Yeah.
And speaking of that as well, was it difficult for you when you were trying to sort of climb up that ladder, trying to do something bigger, something better? Do you think that you being a woman was getting in the way in any circumstances?
Oh, it's interesting because I felt like a lot of the so-called mental blocks I had were maybe my own perceptions of things. I didn't really feel an outward kind of imposition of a certain role, but I think I was a little bit scared of becoming larger and maybe losing what I had. You know, it's like, oh, I've got this name that I've made or something, but what if I did something else? Would people get it? Would I lose my fan base? So it's kind of like that. And I guess Marilyn Monroe kind of felt that too. You know, with her leaving behind an image, you know, would she lose her fans? You know, because I mean, there's no theater if there's no audience.
That's right. And also working on this, you're also sort of bringing up that whole women perception towards women and how they view women as well in the show business, in movies or in performing arts. What's your thoughts about that? How has the perception changed since then? How are people viewing women as artists these days?
Well, I think there's still a lot of similarities. You know, I think there's still a lot of because, you know, women are marketable. You know, they sell products. They you know, there's the beauty aspect, there's the attractiveness. So I think there is still a lot of, maybe also in the Asian culture, where you know, a lot of women have, you know, very specific roles still, you know, in the family, that, you know, you'd give up your career for family, things like that. I think it's still very much an influencer. But I feel that it's really a right time, right place thing. Because I somehow feel that, you know, once you find that you believe that you are more than just your face, you wouldn't feel guilty about maybe using it to kind of open doors. I know that sounds kind of bad, and it's like, what is that, using your... But it's about being confident, and I think, you know, challenging, and I know some really powerful, strong women who've challenged the system, you know, like Ida Narina for one, even Joanne Kum, you know, kind of just creating their own stuff and just, you know, moving forward. And of course, I think it will challenge societal's expectations of women. Maybe, you know, you shouldn't be so loud, or, you know, you shouldn't be a certain way. But, you know, I kind of think thinks that they've done a good job, and I hope that me stepping out and doing stuff on my own, will kind of empower more women to sort of try it out too.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also curious to know about Marilyn Monroe. How back then she was labeled as this maybe bimbo or sex icon, and I think I read a couple of articles that she didn't exactly want that because she felt like it was a lot to live up to. And I think most people actually, when you call them a sex icon, they're like, I don't think so. And what do you think about that when we do that to someone, especially to women? Does that affect their career? Does that affect their future development when they want to move further?
Well, I think definitely you can see it as quite limiting if you're a woman, and if you find that kind of limits the roles that you get offered, things like that. But I think it comes down again to the person, because like Marilyn, in the beginning she didn't really care about using her body, about using her face to get her far, and she was okay with that for a bit. It was only when she wanted to expand beyond that, saying, okay, I'm done with that, now I want something more because I am intelligent, because I am more than that. And I definitely, a lot of performers feel that way, when they get, because people only see what you've done previously and think that that's all, but you have to be the one to drive it. You have to be the one to take risks, and like, I guess in this case, doing Marilyn, it's challenging because, everyone knows, her walk, her voice, her look and all that, and I'm not doing a sort of like an impersonation of her. It's really about highlighting these issues, and kind of giving the essence a voice, so that if people come and watch, they kind of go, do I do that as well? Have I limited myself because I've thought that way? And maybe if I change how I think, then I could just try it out anyway. And
And I think that doesn't just apply to theatre as well. Many parts of your daily lives, even if it's at home or your career, especially when it comes to being women, a lot of times they feel like they have to work extra hard to prove themselves and to be recognized for what they are able to do. And why do you think that's happening? And do you think that the society is changing right now, or do you still feel like women have to work twice as hard to show their work?
I think there's all these expectations. I think that when you're young, you get people tell you who you're supposed to be, or women are in charge of this, or only men can do certain things,
and you have to be a certain way.
In order to succeed or whatever. But I think more and more people are just questioning that. And it is about sort of empowering yourself and being free to be yourself. Because I really feel that if you're trying to be a second-rate version of someone else, you're always going to be unsure, and you're always going to kind of hope and wish that it works. But if you're just kind of just doing it because you like it, and if you said, I don't know what it is, but I feel this needs to be done, then you kind of, it's worth the risk, I feel.
And what about perception of women from Marilyn's time, which is about the 1950s, and now it's 2015? Do you feel like a lot has changed, or there's still a lot of stereotypes when it comes to women, especially in the show business?
Wow, I mean, I can't really speak for the movie industry, but I feel that a lot of what she represented at that time was very maverick-like, because they had a huge censorship board for the movies at that time that took out things which were explicit or revealing. But I think she kind of challenged that. She challenged the idea of what a woman is, from let's say from a conservative woman to a woman who is much more outspoken. And I think in today's society, it really depends, somehow where you live in the world. And also, I guess, you do have that sort of the roles that come with, being of a different religious background, because that does play a big part.
And she's still pretty much a role model for women and girls these days. So people are still sharing her pictures all over social media, sharing her quotes and all. Do you feel like she's still relevant to today's world?
Yeah, what do you think? I feel so. I mean, if you could look at it, what does she give? Like, I mean, for me, when I first remembered seeing her, and it's funny because I have actually a big poster of Marilyn Monroe in my house that my dad has had for the longest time.
So it's passed on to generations.
It was always there. I don't know where he got it from. But you look at her, and you look at her as an ideal. Women want to be her because she somehow gets she's beautiful, she's got the body, and men like her, men want her, and I think it's about that feeling of being wanted.
Right.
But I say, hey, if you could turn it around and say, maybe you are wanted, just something about so unique about you that no one else could do.
Right.
And that's what she was. There's no one else could do what she did. So I feel that's more the lesson somehow. But we get stuck on just the image. Yeah.
And like you said, she worked with what she had, because I think she was not particularly skinny as well. But she believed in herself and in her beauty and whatnot. And that made her very desirable, not only for the men, but women all over the world wanted to be like her.
Absolutely.
And speaking of role model, maybe we can talk about the local performing arts scene. Maybe you can share with us some names of prominent women in the performing arts industry who may also be role models to you or to most people.
Oh, okay. I think I mentioned a few already.
Yes.
I think people like Ida Arena, Susan Lancaster, who's the other one? Well, Nell Ng. It's funny because I feel like they're women that are sort of bold, and they kind of just gone ahead and just done what they've wanted to do, despite opposition, despite people disagreeing maybe and saying, oh, it's not safe, don't do that, but they've done it and they've had some measure of success. So I think, definitely there should be more people like that, more women doing that. And yes, of course, it's not going to be easy and people are going to say stuff, but I think once you go like, what matters more? Is this what I'm trying to bring more important than those voices? Then I guess you're on the way to success there.
Okay, so we'll take another short break. When we come back, we'll talk more about women empowerment in today's world, especially in Malaysia.
Anything can happen Friday. The art and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Durian ASEAN. This is Gowri and I also have
Stephanie Van Driesen.
There you go. So we were discussing about Marilyn and me and a lot of issues as well faced by women these days. And for this final segment, perhaps we can talk about elements of women empowerment as well as feminism, perhaps in a global context first. How far have we come in terms of empowerment, and do you think that we still have gender biases happening in the world or even in Malaysia particularly?
Well, I think definitely still, despite the feminism movement in the 80s and all that, we're still seeing a lot of women struggling with that. I think particularly in societies that don't really quite give them enough value. It's a sort of age-old thing about, the weaker gender and things like that, but it is about value, I feel like, and somehow it doesn't start from the people who are not valuing women. It starts from the woman herself.
Okay.
And the moment she decides to, take up her mantle and say, maybe this is enough, if things do change. And of course, like I'm somehow, because I also do have a side business sort of doing a bit of therapy work. So I've seen a lot of women, when they start becoming a lot more empowered, they do change their lives. And sometimes they leave marriages, things like that. But not to say that you have to do that.
Yeah.
But I think as a snapshot, we have come far. The fact that we have, someone running for, the U.S. presidency who's a woman, and there's quite a few women presidents in the world as well. And of course, Emma Watson being the ambassador, and not talking about so much about sort of just women, power, but that equality, because we do need both.
That's right. And speaking in the Malaysian context, I think it's still something that is probably incomprehensible for most people, and we still have people saying like, what are you talking about? Like, women are supposed to be here and just do here and all. And we don't know how long it's going to take to change that, but hopefully they will get the message soon enough, and maybe even after watching Marilyn and me.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's actually one of my main reasons for doing this show. Not just as a performer trying her skill, but also the message. I think that's not only for women, but it's also for, anybody in their life who feels that they're somehow a victim and that somehow can't change their lives. I'm hoping that sort of the power of that theatre and the music, the songs will kind of, help to stir something up and go, hey, here's a little bit of courage. Here's a little little bit of, doing it for yourself, and you don't have to feel sort of selfish or guilty about it. And just give it a try.
And I like what you said earlier about mental block, because a lot of times, yes, we do tend to blame the men for this whole gender bias or sexism, and we're like, you guys should stop doing this, stop saying that. But then it also goes back to the woman herself, on how she sees herself, the value of herself, how much she thinks she deserves.
Absolutely.
Right. And it goes back to that whole self-empowerment first.
It does. And it is tricky when you come from a background where, you're kind of brought up to believe that women, have certain roles. But I think that's constantly being challenged in the fact that we have such access to, everything that's happening globally.
Okay.
And what women are accomplishing as well globally. I hope that continues to inspire more girls, young girls, and also, women who feel a bit tied down to kind of just do things a bit differently for themselves.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of our segment, and maybe you can tell us, how can people get more information about Marilyn and Me?
Sure. We've got Marilyn and Me happens on the 23rd to the 25th of October.
Yes.
So that's actually literally in like 2 weeks' time. And I'm having it at the Theatre Lounge Cafe in Plaza Damas 3, and actually you can make your bookings via this number, which is 012-236-9100, which is the TLC box office.
Okay.
Or you can find out more information on their website, which is theaterloungecafe.com.
Right.
I do have a Facebook event as well, so if you kind of look for Stephanie Van Driesen or Marilyn and Me, you'll be able to find it.
And how much are the tickets?
The tickets, there's two different prices, because I'm doing a Friday night sort of charity night, giving back a little bit. There's an orphanage actually called Home of Peace for girls. So proceeds from that night will be going to. So the tickets for that are 100 and 150, and the other, so that's Friday night, the 23rd. The other two nights will be 65 and 117.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And before we finish, I have one request from you. Will you be kind enough to sing us a song from the show, Marilyn and Me?
Sure, why not? You guys have been so nice to listen to us till now.
That's right.
So this is I Want to Be Loved by You from Marilyn, and I think this was one of her most perfect songs for her, because she really felt, being from an orphanage herself, she never felt like she belonged anywhere, so she wanted that love. So this is for the women, but also for the guys who support them. So here we go. I wanna be loved by you, just you, and nobody else but you. I wanna be loved by you, alone, boop boop be doo. I wanna be kissed by you, just you, and nobody else but you, yeah. I wanna be kissed by you, alone, do-do-dee-doo.
Yay! Right, so thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, and I'll see.
Us today.
Yeah, and those of you who want to come, please join me for some fun happening at TLC this 23rd, 24th, 25th October.
Right, so good luck for that.
Thank you so much.
All the best.
Thank you.